person as an adolescent, as a young adult?
She just wants to keep your child healthy and safe, which of course entails cramming it full of hormones. Yeah.
Hey, Pam, can I comment?
Please, yes.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. How are you?
You're about done, and I'm about to start, but I just wanted to comment. First of all, I am so happy to always hear from people who really care. I mean, they care. And they just want you to be safe and happy. And your parents could never know what is the best for you. Only the community can. And I'm thinking, lady, I don't know what you're smoking. It's probably legal in California. Definitely legal in Colorado.
No, that stuff's so bad. It's not even legal in California. That's pretty bad stuff there.
But the thing is you can watch this, and I use the term incremental encroachment, which is we take a little, no one really barks back. We take a little bit more. They keep taking. And now you as a parent, you don't sit at the top of the pinnacle when it comes to raising your child. You have to negotiate with the authorities. And they want to follow science. And I'm thinking, okay, follow science. That's great. I'm totally behind it. What science are you following? Because I'll tell you the science I follow. It's called biology. Biology is defined as the science of life. And job number one of every species, job number one, nothing comes before this, survival. You got to bring on the next generation. And we know what it takes to bring the next generation. Female, male, do the hokey pokey. Got it. Otherwise, you don't have the next generation. What they're pushing is psychology. That's why you can have over 100 genders, 200, I don't know. That don't get the job done. That's psychology. It just infuriates me that but it really shows to the level that power wants to be consolidated.
Yep.
And which is a kind of a nice intro into where we're going. Before we get going, may I record, please?
Yes, you should be good.
Hey, and Pam, fantastic stuff. Matter of fact, I took a screenshot because I want to find that video so I can hammer on it too when I get a chance.
I'll drop a link for you.
Okay.
Looks like you're good.
Just to keep, I already told Thumper during the week, and I'll officially be telling you next week, I will not be here. I've got a family thing. Dougie can't be here either. So have a nice time. Because I haven't been able to find.
Pam's going to have an extra long show.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yep.
Okay. Cool. So I just want to let you know.
Awesome. Otherwise, I'd be here. You know how I am. I have no problem doing it. But
yeah. Wait a minute. I don't want to hear about your personal life.
No, we're not talking biology. We're
okay.
Radio.
Okay. Hey, just trying to be clear. All right. We're going to get into the show now. Got that record thing going. And I have I'm so happy with the guest I have today. Not you, Doug. So let me, you're always welcome, especially if I'm not here.
I'm just excited because I'm eating. Just
wait a minute. No. You don't
I'm eating something that doesn't have the word soup in it.
Here we go. Alan,
for a week, I've had to eat everything but soup.
Yeah.
I feel better.
Good. So here's the opening. Alan Myers here. This is For the Republic. Today, I am absolutely thrilled and honored to have a wonderful guest, including Dougie. Her name is Katherine Henry. She is a constitutional attorney. So Katherine, welcome. You're muted.
Hi.
Yay. Thank you.
I thought that's because I was in timeout, but.
No, I didn't do that. Everybody shows up in timeout. Okay. I'm so happy to have you here. And what's really going to be fun is I actually may not do a lot of talking today because I've got two people who look at the same document who've come to it from two different points of origin. And it's going to be very interesting to hear what they've come to learn about this, what I will call extremely important document in our life. So, Katherine, thank you so much for being here. You'll get some time. We're going to go through, as I told you, wackadoodle news. These are just pieces that are out.
Before you get started, just because for the sake of the audience and myself, if you don't terribly mind.
No, I don't.
Because I would love Katherine to give a full introduction, what her alphabet soup after her name is and all that jazz, so we know what we're dealing with here. Don't worry, I don't bite, not usually, not most of the time.
Not over the internet, no.
Not over the internet.
Katherine, would you please introduce yourself to the audience? Thank you.
Yes. So I generally don't like thinking about what kinds of alphabet soup might be behind my last name. I just consider myself a constitutional attorney or freedom fighter, homeschooling parent, mom, the magical words, Christian, those kinds of things. I was born in Michigan, but I actually was raised in Orlando, Florida. And after living in Minnesota for 10 years, back in Michigan for, I can't even do the math right now. I'm just going to say I was there for 15 years. My husband and I moved down here less than a year ago, back down to Florida. So for the first time as adults, we are living here. My husband was actually born in Texas, but grew up in Michigan. So, I used to be licensed in Minnesota to practice law, but hadn't been there in quite some time. So after about 5 years, I let that go and just focused on the 2 federal district courts that I practice in, bankruptcy courts as well. There's a Saginaw Chippewa Tribal Court in Michigan, which is, of course, its own nation that I can practice legally in, the state of Michigan and the United States Supreme Court. And I'm not even really focused at this point on becoming licensed in Florida because Michigan and the U.S. in general need a lot of help right now. So,
well, if my case goes to the Supreme Court, we just appealed to the Ninth Circuit. I'll let you know. I'll tell you about it in a while. But I wanted to say something. See, you followed lawyer with homeschool mom, Christian, and I'm like, okay, that makes the lawyer part tolerable. So,
most lawyers. Let me just say that most lawyers, I'm going to be honest here. And if you're a lawyer, you need to be honest with yourself when you listen to this. Most lawyers are awful jerks. Most lawyers think they're smarter than everybody else. Most lawyers play golf and drink too much. Most lawyers think they know the law and think they know the Constitution, but in reality, they really don't know either because they stop studying the law and they stop studying the Constitution. And quite frankly, they never really think about it in terms of the underlying basic structure of the fact that God gave us our liberty and the whole purpose of government is to protect that liberty. And so everything else has to fall into that grid, if you will. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't belong in our system. And so, what you said is, attorney, the fact that I'm a homeschooling mom and I'm a Christian and I'm a wife and I'm a, business owner and all that other fun stuff. That makes me more of a likable, tolerable human being. And you're right, because most people who are attorneys, they're not that great.
With all apologies to my wife and your husband, I love you. One of my jokes, and then we'll get to his wackadoodle news. I'm going to push him aside. He already knew he wasn't going to talk much. He already said it. But when people ask me about my constitutional knowledge and the fact that I am Mr. Constitution, I'm a constitutional scholar, they say, and all that jazz. And they say, well, Doug, are you a lawyer? And my response is always the same. No. And that's why I understand the Constitution. So
okay.
There you go.
My turn.
Wait, I think Pam wants to interrupt your show too. Go ahead, Pam.
No. Pam is looking at his phone. Thank you.
Go ahead, Alan. You have your show back now for a moment.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm going to pose before we get to wackadoodle news, I'm going to pose an interesting question. At least I think. These two words have been used so far in the show, and they've been used interchangeably, but I don't think they really are. One is attorney, the other is lawyer. Do you know the difference between those two words?
I would say that they are interchangeable in how we use them here.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I'm
Dougie?
both. Okay, Dougie?
We've talked about this and I don't remember the answer.
Okay. Based on what I've studied, attorney is a person who's licensed to practice law. Makes sense. Okay. A lawyer is someone who is learned about the law. I consider you both learned, but that's just my use of the terms.
Now, the problem with lawyer is it rhymes with liar.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
No, it's alliteration. That's not rhyming. It's alliteration.
There you
Close
go.
enough.
Okay. I don't think I need to be here for the rest of the show, but I'll continue. Here we go. First wackadoodle news. Now, this is, and you both know I use this term with great respect, mama bear. This is a mama bear in action. Her name is Jennifer Say, S-E-Y. She was the brand president at Levi. Okay. She's the first woman ever to be a brand president at Levi's, the denim maker. She's been there more than 20 years. And she was actually offered $1 million severance pay if she would stay quiet. She said, bite me. What was the problem? Was the problem she wasn't doing her job? No. She even was told that she would have been in the position to become CEO of Levi. So she's obviously very competent, very talented, doing her job. She even, in her younger years, this is how accomplished this woman is. She was an Olympic gymnast in her prime. So the question is, what happened? Well, she spoke out against school closures during this COVID time. And she didn't like it. She was an advocate for keeping the schools open. And when I say mama bear, I mean mama bear. She has 4 children. So she got on the wrong side of the executives. She no longer works there, but she is speaking out. Katherine, your thoughts?
Well, I have 4 children, but I can tell you that at the time that Governor Whitmer was shutting down the state of Michigan, I'll never forget it, actually. The start of the COVID chaos for me was, and the original website I created to fight all this was stopcovidchaos.com. No joke. But anyway, it was a Thursday. It was about, I want to say 11:15 p.m. And I believe it was March 13th. And Governor Whitmer was on the news to say that as of Monday, they were going to be, which I believe was going to be the 16th, they were going to be closing schools in Michigan for 3 weeks. A couple of things about that. One is that, oh my gosh, 3 weeks is a very long time. I mean, my mind first didn't even go to, do they have a right to do this? Because this was the first time that they were this in your face about any kind of, taking away of rights, right? We weren't trained to even realize how much they were going to do all in the open for once. That's the biggest thing between COVID and everything before COVID was the openness with which they are taking away our liberties. But it was 3 weeks. That was the thing that kind of was a shock to me, but also in my school, I worked in a school, and I'll tell you what I did in a minute, but in my school district, we had spring break the very following week. So that would have been 4 straight weeks. But my school district also decided they weren't even going to go to school the very next day. So I never even got to say goodbye to any of the kids that I worked with for years And I worked in a K through 4 building. And I did restore, obviously not attorney work. I wasn't representing, juvenile delinquents in kindergarten through 4th grade. But I have done juvenile delinquencies, but they don't need them that young. But I worked in a school district in the greater Grand Rapids area, an impoverished district in many ways. And what I did was to do restorative justice. And I helped these individuals, these young people, to learn responsibility for taking responsibility for their actions and how to repair the harm they've caused, how to bring in the people that have been harmed by those actions and make it where it's not just the school doing all the punishments, and simultaneously keeping the students that were harmed out of that process so they don't feel any kind of ownership in being able to move forward at a level of comfort, et cetera. And we know how dangerous of a place schools can be because of other children, but also because of what the adults are doing to our students, our children. But anyway, so in the school district, the frame of reference that I came from, and I've done a lot of volunteer work with domestic abuse shelters. And I was actually, for years, I've been putting together care packages for women and children in domestic abuse shelters and working with a lot of pregnancy resource centers and things of that nature. And so, and I've done a lot of divorce work throughout the years in 2 different states. So I've seen, and one more thing is that I've worked a lot with child protection cases and represented children in abuse and neglect cases. And I've been a lawyer guardian ad litem. I've been a guardian ad litem. I've been, in all kinds of different roles. So at any rate, and I've also worked as a special education mediator. And so I've seen the impact that not being in school can have on children, whether it's, a child with autism who needs that regular pattern to be able to receive those supports and services, whether it's a child who is in a neglectful home situation. A lot of the children that we worked with had, whether it was through a purposeful thing or not from the parent, maybe the parent was working 2, 3, 4 jobs trying to make ends meet. Maybe the actual biological parents, one was deceased and one was in jail, or, a lot were in guardianships or, some sort of CPS involvement. And so without having those mandated reporters in their lives, without having the people that I worked with in my building, the school social worker and our behavior interventionist, the principal, even the school secretary, those people, the school bus drivers, the lunch ladies, the janitors, we worked as a team to make sure those kids had a safe place to go where they could learn. And if for nothing else, had meals. This school district made sure to send those kids home with dinner if they needed it every day. They sent them home with, bigger packages of food to take over breaks. I mean, it was to me, to hear the words that Thursday evening, we're going to close schools for 3 weeks, which again, in my district meant a whole nother day, plus 4 weeks, plus I knew that meant who knows how much longer it's going to be. It's going to be at least a month before I see these kids. And I didn't ever get to say goodbye to these kids. So to me, it was like, you've got to be kidding me. So to go mama bear in that situation, I would go mama bear all over anybody to protect any of those kids. And I will tell you that year, I even had my daughter enrolled in kindergarten at that school because although I'm a homeschooling parent, let's be honest, it's a little hard to homeschool her during the day while working in an elementary school 3 days a week. So I brought her to that environment. And I loved the kindergarten teacher she had, and it worked great. But so I say that as a parent, I say that as a person who wasn't a teacher, but who was in the school system working with those kids. I say that as someone who's advocated for children. I could go on for another 3 hours, but I'll just say, Mama Bear, I totally understand. Totally understand.
Thank you so much. I did not know that history about you. So thank you for sharing the...
Oh, I have lots of surprises.
Yeah, we're going to get to them. Dougie, any thoughts on the brand president out of Levi's and basically telling the execs to bite me?
Well, first of all, that proves that her principles were higher than anything else. And, it's funny because in the Bible it says, it's harder for a rich man to, fit through the eye of a needle than to I can't remember what it was, but it had to do with the eye of the needle being the entrance into town. They'd have to lose everything in order to get through. And most people who are wealthy are not willing to do that. She was. That's what's huge about it. That's called principles. Now, that said, in a sense, it's kind of up my alley, especially lately. Last Wednesday night, I spoke to a school board in Bonzo, California, in response to a lawyer for the insurance company that basically tried to put the fear of government into the board and the parents. And I began my speech with, well, everything that lawyer said was filled with legal inaccuracies. We got problems here. Here, let me explain. And then I went through it. It was funny because normally you only get 3 minutes. They decided to reduce it to 2 minutes. And then I had so many people give me time. I was on for like 10 minutes. So they just kept giving me time so I could finish what I had to say. But what's important here is this. Localism. Localism means that local issues are handled by local government. And there's a lack of authority when it comes to the bigger governments down at that level. And she was entirely correct, standing firm as a parent. Well, I love mama bears. When I hadn't even heard the term before until Sarah Palin came along. And then now it's like, go at it, mama bears. But I'll tell you what, when I was giving my speech, the mama bears were on their feet in applause because they're sick of this garbage. And they know that the Constitution doesn't start, we the judges, we the politicians, we the lawyers, we the attorneys. It begins we the people, because localism is huge.
Can I make things interesting? You mentioned localism, and I forget exactly how you worded that, but basically that the higher up levels of government, like the federal government at certain points, has no authority over what's happening at the local government. And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and say that's not entirely true, because when the federal government looks down and they see state or local governments trampling the God-given liberties of the people, it is their duty to step in and protect those God-given liberties. The whole reason why we have a country in the first place, founded on, I love the we the people in the background. You have how it starts there. One of the big things it's listing in there is to protect those God-given liberties. So whether we're talking about the states protecting, state governments protecting us from other parts of state government or local government, or federal government protecting us from state, it doesn't matter. Every single government official, in order to be properly in that role, is swearing an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And of course, if you're in a state government, your state constitution as well. So it's their job, whether you're in federal government, state government, whatever, it is your job to defend the Constitution. And it doesn't matter who is getting in the way or who is trampling those liberties. It could be somebody at the local level. And it's no longer okay for us to think, well, these branches are separate so that, well, if somebody's causing a problem, the other person gets to say, oh, that's not my problem, it's a different department, or I have no jurisdiction. No, they better darn well step in and do something about it. So I don't know. See, I got your gears going, ready to say something. So thought I'd start a fight right off. I don't know.
Well, it's not a fight. It's discussion.
Well, I have a question. I understand where you're coming from, and the essentials are in the right neighborhood. Some of the context is off, so I'm going to ask a question. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that the 14th Amendment, the interpretation of the 14th Amendment, due process clause, provides for the Bill of Rights to be incorporated to the states by the federal government, and that is the federal government's job to enforce those Bill of Rights against the states?
See, that's almost starting with the assumption that rights are given to us by the government. The God-given liberties that are solidified in the Bill of Rights are the same God-given liberties that we have regardless of which state we live in. So the same liberties exist, and the same liberties have to be protected as to every single U.S. citizen, regardless of where you live.
Who's to protect them?
Everyone in government. Every
Okay, and see, that's
single
where you're
person.
wrong. See,
No.
the problem is, are the
Fix the
greatest, now hang on.
Yeah.
The greatest threat against our rights is who?
The government.
So why do we want them protecting our rights if they're the greatest threat?
Well, that is the only job. That is literally the purpose.
What does it say in the Declaration of Independence and the preamble that's the government's job regarding our rights?
What was that?
In the Declaration of Independence and in the preamble,
Yep.
in both places, it indicates what the government's job is regarding our rights. Do you remember what it says?
It is to secure blessings of liberty.
Secure.
Yes.
Secure is not protect. That's what we've been told, because see, they want us to believe they're there to protect our rights and guarantee our rights, and that's their job, and it isn't. And
because they're actually not. I would say they don't. I would say they've never tried to claim that they're protecting our rights.
No, absolutely. Democrats say it all the time.
Oh, no. They're conflating.
But see, no. They say they're there to protect and guarantee your rights, but then they make up new rights, is what they do.
No, they say they're there to protect us, to secure our safety, our health, our welfare.
Yeah, I've heard them say protect our rights and guarantee our rights.
I've never heard them say that.
But anyway, nonetheless, so we're not off the beaten path here. So in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. In the preamble, secure the blessings of liberty basically being your natural rights. That is what it says. The word secure is different than protect or guarantee. Most people in this country believe that government is there to protect our rights. That's like the Roman soldier after the Roman Empire became, and the Roman soldier went from a community individual to an enforcement arm of the empire, jumping in front of you, throwing up his shield, saying, "Don't worry, I'll protect you against me." Well, that's absolutely idiotic. They're not there to protect our rights, and they never should have, first of all. Second of all, if you read the Bill of Rights, their job when it comes to our rights is to hands off our rights. First words of the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Last words of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. First words of the Third Amendment, no soldier shall. Middle of the Fourth Amendment, shall not be violated. That's not words telling them to protect our rights. That's words telling them hands off our rights, first of all. So if they're there to secure our rights, what does that mean if it does not mean protect? To secure something, especially from their point of view, is to keep it where it belongs. And where it belongs is in our possession, because they were given to us by God. They are our rights. We possess them because they are a gift from God, and they're not to touch our rights. They're not supposed to be involved in our rights. In fact, Federalist 45 by James Madison goes into details. He basically says federal government's got no authority whatsoever regarding our rights. The states can make some laws regarding our rights, but it's our job to make sure they don't go too far. What has happened is with the 14th Amendment and the war between the states, everything flipped. And instead of the federal government being told, hands off our rights, none of your business, handle the external stuff, anything domestic is none of your damn business, what has happened now is we're convinced they've got to be there to protect us from the misbehaving states. And so the whole idea of what was originally intended has been flipped by the war between the states, by by interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which I think is a bad interpretation. The federal government's job is not to be a national government. It's to be a government that handles the external issues, the issues that were regarding protecting, promoting, and preserving the union. But the local issues, like your rights, that's really supposed to be up to the states. If the states absolutely read Federalist 45.
No, I need to read the Constitution, and the Constitution makes it pretty damn clear. That is absolutely
it makes it pretty damn clear that Bill of Rights
okay,
regarding the federal government.
My turn.
Read the preamble to the Bill of Rights.
My turn.
Oh, I did. Yes, I read it all the time on my videos. Yeah.
Okay, let's be specific.
Yeah.
I didn't think we would get here on the first wackadoodle news, but it's very interesting. And what is important, I find about this is that both of you are very learned on the Constitution, well beyond me. I do have questions, and this is because I am the student. I just keep asking pain in the ass questions. And so I'm going to be and I get the subtlety, I get the differences. I think they're important because you're both looking at the same thing from two distinct points of view. And it's going to be enlightening for the audience to listen to these different points of view. But now let's get real specific, because that's how I deal. And that is, I'll go with Doug first, then Katherine, you can come back. Unless you want ladies first.
I would love to have ladies first, because I've been dying to tell you guys something about the.
Okay, no, that's good. Okay, so I mean, that was the way I was raised. It's always ladies first. Anyway, you believe, and I'm going to state this, and then tell me if I've got this correct. Okay, because I don't want to misstate it. Your understanding of the Constitution is that we know, we're all in agreement that our natural rights come from the Creator. They do not come from government.
Correct.
They're a part and parcel of being a human being, period, done, no argument.
Yes. The
question is, starting with the Constitution, does the Constitution, I believe, recognizes that these are Creator-given rights?
Yes.
Would you say that's the case, Doug?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got natural rights from the Creator. The Constitution was written with the idea, with the premise, the position of acknowledging that these rights are from the Creator and not from government. This is huge. It's really important. To me, it's huge common ground. So now we've got natural rights, Creator given. Government acknowledges they don't give them. The government is to protect them or to secure them. And the question always is, to me, now, if we're talking about a local level and somebody breaks into my house, okay, we know that's considered a crime and I get to protect myself. What I've come to understand is one of the biggest fears and one of the biggest overall arguments during the Constitutional Convention was this fight over how powerful the federal government would be. Huge fight. 4.5 months of guys going at it. Because it was really important to get this as best as possible, because they were absolutely breaking new ground. So, Katherine, for you, is the federal government, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right or not, is it the federal government's job, requirement, duty based on the U.S. Constitution to protect our individual, obviously not give them, we're all in agreement with that, to protect them? Or is that not their area? If it is their area, where in the Constitution do you find support for that? Does that make sense?
I think so. So basically, the whole point of having government at all, so I'm going to take it a step back from the Constitution just to make sure that we're understanding the context. The whole point of having government and having society have some sort of rules by which we will live together is that we won't trample upon one another's liberty in the exercise of our own liberty. So we're not, I'm not going to trample upon the liberty of my neighbor in the exercise of my liberties, but also that any state or local government is not going to trample upon my liberty, and any federal government is not going to trample upon my liberty. By having any of these constitutions, they are to secure, and I would say, which means to protect our individual liberty. Now, as far as how big the federal government is, let me tell you, I think Doug and I will probably, and just for anybody who's listening, I've never spoken to Doug in my entire life, so this isn't like a pre-planned thing, and I know nothing about what he would say, but I'm going to guess we would agree that the state, the local, and the federal governments are all entirely way too large for what they were ever intended or allowed to be. And perhaps he would not agree with me on the state and local side, but I'm going to say to you that we have far too much government doing far too many things at every single level. I don't think local government is supposed to be regulating in the area of our rights. I don't think any government is supposed to do that, but only insofar as we are trampling upon any liberties of somebody else. So if we are murdering somebody, that's taking away their life. If we are, if I'm going to go and steal my neighbor's car because I like it, well, obviously I'm taking his property. I don't have the right to do that. That's just inherently bad. And so if government at any level is going to try to regulate that behavior and provide some sort of punishments or some way to, get the injured party reimbursed or whatever the case may be, those kinds of things make sense. So to me, whether it's a state or local or federal government, that's their main job, is just to allow us to be able to exercise our God-given liberties. And obviously a national government, a federal government is, best suited then to protect us from outside sources, as I think Doug was getting at, to protect us from those outside sources, to ward off invasion or to do things of that nature. But it is also not okay to have, for example, a United States Supreme Court sit by idly, or even a president to sit by idly and allow, say, for example, I was livid with Trump when he was allowing these governors, such as the governor of Michigan or any of these other states, to do what they were doing in this response to COVID crap, because they didn't have the authority to do that. And he, at the very least, should have held a press conference that said those governors don't have the right to do that, whether you're talking a separation of powers issue or you're talking about a God-given liberty issue, anything. I was furious that each branch was failing the people, that each level of government was failing the people, because under it all, their jobs are to secure our blessings of liberty. And if they're not doing that, then their job is not essential and they shouldn't be doing it to begin with. So I would say things like, as federal government, the Department of Education should not exist. We don't need a whole IRS. We don't need all these, we don't need a CDC and FDA and, the 47,000 alphabet combinations that exist. Most of those shouldn't even be in existence. We shouldn't have an FBI and a CIA and, different branches of military all doing different things and overlapping. And no, that's not the purpose of government at any level. So it's kind of a big question that you asked. I'm trying to rein it in. But one thing I do want to say before perhaps we get off topic, the only thing you and I talked beforehand, before the show, for the first time, just a couple days ago, and you asked me if there's anything I wanted to make sure to get in. And this relates to the question. So if I didn't use my words succinctly enough or clearly enough, let me just say, for a disclaimer, I am not a licensed attorney in the state of California, nor in the state of Florida, but I am going to talk about the Constitution in both. But the preamble to the California state constitution: we, the people of the state of California, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom, in order to secure and perpetuate its blessings, do establish this Constitution. Likewise, the state of Florida, we, the people of the state of Florida, being grateful to Almighty God for our constitutional liberty, in order to secure its benefits, perfect our government, ensure domestic tranquility, maintain public order, and guarantee equal civil and political rights to all, do ordain and establish this Constitution. And we, the people of the state of Michigan, grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom, and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. And of course you have, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we, the people of the United States, And in order to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And the one thing I want to say before my very long answer is done is to point out just to those 3 states, what is Article 1? And again, I've never even looked at the California Constitution before tonight because, I've been a little busy with the Michigan, Florida, and other constitutions. Article 1, Declaration of Rights. Article 1 of the Florida State Constitution, Declaration of Rights. Article 1 of the Michigan State Constitution, Declaration of Rights. It doesn't mean that it's the job of the state and local governments to define our rights. That's like the 9th Amendment saying, no, you don't even have to define your rights in order for the government to still have its job to protect them. But it is the government's job to make sure that government is not getting in the way of our exercising our liberties, nor are we stealing each other's cars, murdering each other, kidnapping each other's children, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Katherine. Before I unchain Doug, thank you for all of that. Again, there's a tremendous amount of common ground I find with all of us. Again, I am the least knowledgeable on the Constitution. I absolutely agree, and Doug will comment on this too. Is there too much government at all levels? I'm going to say yes, yes, and yes. Local, state, federal, absolutely. You mentioned a few agencies of the federal government that need to go away because they're not even within they're not constitutional. One of my favorites, and I don't mean that as a compliment, Department of Education. Okay, it's the Department of Indoctrination. This is the federal government, and this is why I push back against federal government intrusion into our individual lives and at the state level. They have figured out a way, and that's my area, the monetary system. They have figured out a way, hey, we're going to get all the money, all the big money, and then we're going to hand it out based on what we want. Oh, states, you want some money from us, from the Department of Education? You're going to do what we want. This is to me, this is absolutely wrong. This is why the Department of Education needs to go away. They have no business in our states or our local education. They don't. That was not their job. So we are in agreement, I do believe, and Doug will fill in, that we have too much government at all levels. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you why I think this is. And I take personal responsibility for this. I am talking to myself when I say this, so I'm not excluding myself. We, the people, have not done our job. We were given an absolutely fabulous gift, literally given the gift that no people in any country had ever been given before. It's called the Constitution. There's just one thing they really didn't hammer home. Hey, take care of it. You got to take care of it at the local level. You got to take care of it at the state level. You got to take care of it at the federal level. The reason we have way too much government is everybody before us and now us today got lazy. We didn't tell them no. And we kept electing people who we just let them do it. So this, to me, we have government we have way too much government at every level. We do need some government because we need to live in a society. We need to know where to put the traffic lights and the stop signs and yada, yada, yada. So I'll be quiet. Dougie, your thoughts.
In 2007, a friend of mine, Tim Curlin, who went by Loki on Blog Talk Radio and in many ways served as a mentor to me regarding my constitutional education. My constitutional education, by the way, began when I was 8 years old, when I began going to the college libraries to start looking this stuff up. I was an advanced reader, and for some reason, Schoolhouse Rock really got me thinking. But I couldn't recite the preamble without singing it for years. But anyway, And we did a study on the entire, and this, remember, it's 2007, so this is before the Obama presidency, this is the tail end of George W. Bush. And we separated federal funding into two piles, constitutional and unconstitutional. The unconstitutional pile was 85% of federal funding. Remember, this is during Bush. I'm sure it's worse now. 85% of federal funding unconstitutional. Now, when the founding fathers met during the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia, in the same room that the Declaration of Independence had been debated and written, their aim was originally to try to fix what they thought was a problematic Articles of Confederation. And by the sixth week, they had realized that there was no fixing the Articles of Confederation, and they would need to write a new constitution. Two of the delegates from New York threw their hands up and walked out. Rhode Island had never sent any delegates because they feared this idea of creating a new big government. The idea was to create a central government that could handle the things that a country would need its government to handle without that government interfering with state sovereignty. Prior to the Constitution, the states had original authority over every single issue, all of them.
Within their state, correct?
Within their state. They also have the authority to do things like declare war and all that, but as an individual state, not as a country. And one of the reasons they had militias was not only because they wanted to protect themselves against the possibility of foreign invaders, but each other. And so these were states that considered themselves no different than their own countries. So how do you get a bunch of little countries together to form a union? But this union also operates as a country. It's not going to be something like the EU where it is a true confederation and this countries, basically hang on to all their powers, and the EU has very, 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 very limited powers. They wanted this new authority, this new government to have more than that. But at the same time, they did not want it to have so many powers that it interfered with the internal order and prosperity of a state. And so what's interesting is if you read 1823 was the publication date, a new view of the Constitution of the United States by John Taylor, you also realize something else that's very fascinating. In the very first chapter, he explains that when the framers of the Constitution entered that room in May of 1787, that most of them were actually nationally minded guys, that they had thought what we needed was a big, strong national government. And when they began to try to put the round pegs through the square holes, it turned out it didn't work out so well. And by the end of the convention, most of the nationalists were no longer nationalists, and they'd become more Jeffersonian in their thinking. Jefferson was not there. Jefferson was in France at the time. He was corresponding with a number of them, Madison being one of them. But they went in with more of a Hamiltonian kind of mind of a larger, government that would control everything, domestically included. And they came out of that convention with a document and a mindset that was more wrapped around this federal government that would only handle external issues and disputes between the states or disputes between persons between the states, and items that would directly influence the union, such as establishing postal services, post offices, and establishing post roads, or things such as acting as a mediator when the states had their disputes. Otherwise, the only job of the federal government was the external issues. And that would mean hands off all rights, period. The problem with our rights, however, is sometimes there does need to be laws regarding our rights. Laws need to be passed. So the state governments retained that authority. Federal government was given no authority regarding our rights. Once again, First Amendment, Congress shall make no law. Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. which means every single federal gun law is unconstitutional. No soldier shall not be violated in the Fourth Amendment, and so on and so forth. So, and the way I like to explain it, give a couple examples. Some of you have heard me talk about this before. The way I like to explain it is, number one, when it comes to, for example, guns, we have a right to keep and bear arms. There's no question we have that right. No city, no state, no federal government should be stomping all over that right. However, laws need to be made regarding that right. I'm thrilled that my 9-year-old granddaughter cannot go down the street and go buy a gun. Somebody had to make that law, and the federal government does not have the authority. So therefore, the states are entitled to make laws regarding our rights. That's a great example. Also, a lot of our rights, now the federal government's business anyway. For example, I have the right to go through my intersection. So does the other guy. And my right to go through that intersection stops at the tip of his bumper. So how do we both entertain our right to go through that intersection in a manner that preserves order in our society? Government then has the authority to make a law regarding that right. So they put up a stop sign or a stoplight. Fortunately, our city didn't call, I don't think they did anyway, call Washington, D.C. say, hey, can we put a stoplight here? No, it's not the federal government's business. It's up to the local government. Localism. Local government handles local issues. Federal government has no authority to care about whether or not there's a stoplight there. There's nothing expressly enumerated in the Constitution that gives them that authority anyway. So that's what I meant in the beginning when I began talking about this, is I wanted it to be understood that our rights, that's the reason we have state constitutions also. The federal constitution is for the federal government. There are some prohibitions to the states. Article 1, Section 10 is a wonderful example. Every paragraph begins, no state shall, but it was designed for the creation by the states who are writing this contract as parties to this contract to create a federal government to handle the stuff they know they can't handle because they'll be fighting over it. Who's going to send an ambassador? Massachusetts or Virginia? No, it's going to be the United States. So we need a central government that does that. Or who's going to declare war? Massachusetts or Pennsylvania? No, we need a central government that does that for the things that a country does. So that's why we needed a federal government. I had mentioned Federalist 45 earlier, and I wanted to read the section I was referring to help illuminate the discussion even a little bit better. And then I want to get back to the protect versus secure thing, and then I'll wrap up and allow you guys to speak as much as you would like until my next opportunity. Federalist 45. Hey, I was in a debate at the NAACP surrounded by all kinds of interesting people. I can keep my cool, trust me. But anyway, I was such a quote unquote racist at that debate that the cops in the corner had their hands on their guns. But anyway, that's beside the point. It was fun. But anyway, here's from Federalist 45. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which the last power of taxation will, for the most part, be connected. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people. Let me stop for a second. Lives, liberties, and properties of the people, their rights. States, that's their job. And the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. The operations of the federal government will be most extensive and important in times of war and danger, those of the state governments in times of peace and security. But then the question pops up, and this is the one that Katherine essentially was saying, but didn't say it in exactly these words. But what if, oh, wait a second, we're not on AM radio, right?
Well,
so no. No?
No.
Oh, man,
Okay.
I'm on AM radio all the time. I'm not allowed to use those 7 words.
Hey, you can. You can't say you can't say Fugazi and you can't say democracy. You know I don't like those words.
That's good. How about Mother Fuddrucker?
No.
But anyway, okay.
That's advertising a restaurant.
What if, her question basically is this. So what if the states are jerks? I'll use that word. What if they are jumping all over our rights? Then what? Don't we need the federal government then to come in and spank them and tell them they're not allowed to do it? And my first response is no. And the reason why is that they don't have that authority. That's our job. We're supposed to keep our states under control. We have failed our job. When it comes
That's what I said earlier.
And one of my favorite examples to use, I got two examples and then I'll turn it over. One of my favorite examples is McDonald v. Chicago. McDonald v. Chicago. Chicago was banning handguns. They got all the way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, Chicago, you can't do that. It violates the Second Amendment. Everybody called me up. And matter of fact, Clarence Thomas was one of the majority opinions on that too. And I typically love Clarence Thomas. I wasn't in full agreement with him on this, and I'll explain in a minute. So my email, my phone, everything's blowing up. Man, what a win for gun rights. And I said, don't be so sure. Think about what just happened. The federal government dictated to a city what it can or cannot do regarding your gun rights. They may have had the right answer this time, but what if they revisit Heller and they change it from an individual right to a collective right? Do you still want the federal government enforcing their will on the states regarding your rights? So we don't want that Pandora's box open, and there's no authority for that Pandora's box to be open. We need to keep it under control as citizens. The problem is we've lost that control, and it feels pretty hopeless at this point. We're not supposed to, the Bill of Rights, if you read the preamble of the Bill of Rights, it says that the Bill of Rights was written to prevent the misconstruction, and I can't remember the other word, but it's basically means to destruction against our rights. I can't remember the word off the top of my head. But of its powers, abuse, that's the word, abuse of its powers. Who's the it? The federal government. The whole purpose of the Bill of Rights is to tell the federal government, by the way, none of your business. I'm being good.
You're doing great. I got one question.
But I want one more example. So here's the thing. I have the right to swing my arms. I can swing my arms until I get close to Katherine. But if I get too close to Katherine and I pop her in the nose, I've got a problem there. I allowed my right to interfere with her right. I'm supposed to be responsible with my right. Now, is it government's job to protect her from being punched in the nose? Or is it government's job to secure her right? And if it's interfered with, then get involved, take the report, and let it go to court, and then I get my punishment. Because if they're there to protect, then that means they can make a law not allowing me to swing my arms in the first place. And that is dangerous ground. And that's what I mean by protect versus secure. And I'm not positive, but I could have sworn I saw a yellow light bulb pop up on Katherine's screen. Maybe not understanding, but understand what I mean, if that makes sense. All right, Katherine, ball's all yours. Thank you for your patience as I went through that.
I get one comment, and then we go back.
Oh, you're here still. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm still here. I couldn't find the leave button. I apologize. I also want you to know this is the longest time in the history of For the Republic that we've spent on one wackadoodle news piece. It's the longest time.
Wackadoodle news?
This is wackadoodle number one. Yeah. Okay.
Katherine, one of two things is going to happen. She's either won't be able to wait till to come back for some future fun, or she won't come back because of all the abuse. I don't know.
I'm being very nice and polite, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, now,
okay.
You know me.
Wait a minute.
I can sit here and sit on my hands and keep my mouth shut until it's my turn. That's the way I am.
No, you're not. Give me a break.
Well, except for when you're talking. Then I love interrupting.
Thank you. Okay. You first of all, you forgot to mention something very important. At least it is to me. Who wrote Federalist 45?
James Madison.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it has this funny title, The Father of the Constitution.
Okay. I thought it was someone else, but it's good to know who wrote it. Second, I got to find my note. Well, I forgot where it is, but what I'm getting out of it, this is what I think is so interesting and important is I'll tell you the law. This is what I wanted to say. This is the law I do want passed at the Fed, considered in Congress going forward. Must pass, and I'm being very serious, must pass a constitutionally allowed test. If it cannot, so instead of, waging this post passage.
Yeah, the problem is based on whose interpretation.
Wait a minute. Well, I'm getting there. Yeah. First of all, you got to pass the law. It's got to pass.
Wait, you want them to read it? You want them to read a bill before they vote on it? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm not Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, they're not supposed to know what's in it until it passes.
I apologize.
Catherine and I are going to team up on you on this one. Yeah.
We're going to get there. But my point is this. First, we get, and I'm telling you, like everything I see, and this is really at the heart of this, whether it's the federal government's authority, power, right, responsibility, local, or in between, let me tell you something. We, the people, aren't doing our job. There are elected employees, and using the constitutional way of writing, it's lowercase e, lowercase e. We are the citizen owners. Capital C, capital O. We're allowing the employees to tell us, the owners, what they're going to do. This has got to stop.
Yeah, could you imagine if the owner of a mansion let the maid tell him whether or not he was allowed to carry a gun in his house?
Well, she did, but that's another story.
I mean, that's what's happening, right? The hired help is telling us what we can or can't do regarding stuff like that.
Our hired help, okay, I won't go there. But anyway, the point is this. No law, federal, state, local, gets to be passed in the future without first, before it can become effective, it must pass a constitutionally legal test. Now, I know we're going to get into what that means. Okay. Is it, interpret or whatever? That's where the war will be waged. One side will go from, just to break it out, one side will be interpretive. The other will be as written. This goes to the public. This isn't done in some little back room somewhere, hiding in a corner. This gets public. You're going to pass a law? Yes, Catherine, I know. I'm crazy. I expect them to read the Constitution.
Well, and the law.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
by
too.
the way, I have to interrupt you. So it's not my fault. It's the chat rooms. Red 1 October 7 says, no, we're not citizens. Yes, citizens is actually a good word. I know it. I know. And we are citizens of our country, not federal citizens. Citizens, their government then serves them. The alternative is that you're a subject. I understand the state national thing, 14th Amendment. You and I need to talk later. It's kind of right, kind of wrong. That's a very complicated subject. It'll take more than an hour. But I felt like I had to address that.
Catherine, just so you know what Doug's talking about. On the website, there is a chat room, and people can make comments about anything, including jumping, singing cockroaches, which Doug really likes to watch. Anyway, back to it.
The cockroaches are my fault, by the way. We'll explain later.
Oh, no, Mike, I'm frozen.
I can hear you. Are you still there, Catherine? Hello. Doug, can you hear me?
I heard her when she said I'm frozen, and then I haven't heard her since. And yeah, sure, her picture is frozen.
Right.
The best thing to do would be to shut down and re-enter for her.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Please,
you stay where you're at.
Please come back. Oh, there you are.
She's back, and she's moving and everything.
Just unmute. There you are.
There we go.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Hear you okay now?
Good.
Yeah, I noticed you froze. So apparently you heard. I think you heard me when I said turn off, come back in.
Well, you're back.
I did not hear anything. You guys just stopped moving. So I
Oh
put myself
wow!
on
Yeah,
mute.
no, I said shut down and come back in the room. And that's what
Well,
she did. I'm like,
she's
either she
back.
heard me or she knew what to do.
She's back, and I'm glad you're back. Anyway, my deal is this. As I said, we the people need to step up. Whether it ultimately will be decided what government level something is, if any at all, we need to get involved. And one way to bring this home, because you're going to have the disagreements. Fine, let's have the disagreement, but let's understand what we're disagreeing on, and let's understand the source of the disagreement. And then we the people, finally get this taken care of. Doug, you're muted, but that's okay sometimes. Oh, good. He's nodding.
No, I muted so that you wouldn't hear me chewing on my dinner.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just so you know, Catherine, Doug eats and drinks on the show. Drinking is...
I'm so busy. It's like the only time I have a chance to do something.
Yeah.
I figure the screen's not on me. It's on you when you're talking.
Yeah.
You're so busy. I'm sorry. Did you say you have 4 kids and you homeschool and you do all these other fun things?
No, I have 7 grandkids, which means I have 3 little kids and one that's smaller called their dad in my house. And then I teach 6 classes, 3 online classes. I've written 8 books. I am a fellow for the American Freedom Alliance.
Yeah,
I'm just teasing.
But the worst part of it all is I also spend 2 hours a week, usually with Alan on his show, and he spends 2 hours a week on my show.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 radio shows too.
And,
I'm feeling unloved then if you guys have each other on your shows, and this is
well, Catherine, you're invited back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and yeah.
Please. Okay, but wait a minute. You guys have sat there.
He's the only one brave enough to wear blue on a constitutional show.
Blue? This is teal. Teal is my favorite color. Don't say it's
know the
blue.
difference of different kinds of blue. We know like 8 colors.
No, it's teal. As I was going to say, you guys are bragging about how busy you are, and and I get it, and you are.
No, right now he's the busiest. It's tax season.
But really, let me explain what busy is. I've got 2 cats. Okay.
Oh, well, no. You don't have 2 cats. 2 cats have you.
Hey, they only sleep 20 hours a day. Okay, so
Did you want me to answer any of those constitutional questions that were still lingering? Because I just know.
Yeah. We've gotten off
there
topic.
is that funny thing about the Constitution we were discussing.
So anyway,
I'm letting my dogs in if you keep this up.
No, don't do that, please. All right, Catherine, last comments on what has become Wackadoodle News 1. Please share.
Well, real quick, you mentioned, you have this theory about laws and before they get passed and everything. And I'm just going to throw this out there. Would that really pertain to a bill that's passed to remove a whole bunch of other unconstitutional laws? Do you really want to apply? Because technically a bill being passed to remove other unconstitutional laws is itself a law. So anyway, I'll leave that for you to think about.
I like that addition.
I like the context. I like
the addition that if a law is being passed to remove unconstitutional activities, I'm okay with that. I like that.
You guys would love the amendment that I wrote, and I'll say I wrote it, but it was really God's doing. To amend the Michigan State Constitution. And we were circulating that petition in 2020. And of course, through COVID, it was a little challenging. And we didn't have all these petition extensions like the state of California got in a variety of, national news topics. But anyway, there was a lot of good stuff in there. So at some point, I think we'll probably have to dissect that, because I think it would actually be stuff that both of you would agree with. And quite frankly, anybody who loves the Constitution. And I think it would be that expansion upon common ground. But, it's interesting because there's 2 main things I wanted to address that you brought up with regard, mostly, with you, Doug, in terms of answering what the question was. And I kind of wanted to just touch on those. One, and I'm just doing a quick gloss over touching on because there's so much that could be said, obviously. But one is you glossed over, one of the jobs of the federal government was between disputes between persons and the states. And so as to that point, I just wanted to bring us to a couple of quick, and Alan, you were asking for specifics. Article 3, and anybody who's ever watched any of my videos or heard me in a speech knows that I'm going to darn well provide the actual citation for the constitutional provision I'm about to discuss. But Article 3, Section 2, the judicial power shall extend in all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, laws of the United States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, and so we go into some examples there. But so the I can't even say that word today. The judiciary's job. I don't like how my hand disappears at certain times with my background.
Oh yeah, see what happens to my Dr. Pepper.
Oh, that's freakish. Yeah. But well, it's my own hand, so that's why I was a little concerned.
No, I can just so you know.
I wasn't giving you guys the finger. That's all I'm going to say. I was not giving you the finger.
Your hand is visible to me. So you're fine.
But anyway, the judicial power to basically, I'll just, in the most simplistic terms, the United States Supreme Court's power extends over cases, law and equity arising under this Constitution. Okay, keep that in mind. And I'm going to jump over to Article 6, one of my favorite articles of the Constitution for a variety of reasons. But if we go to Article 6, and it is the second paragraph that says
Supremacy Clause.
Yeah, but specifically identifying that, of course, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. And the senators and representatives, so state senators and state representatives, that's part of the U.S. Senators and representatives and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states. So just basically the other way to say that is every single government official in each of the three branches, whether it's a state government or it is a federal government we were talking about, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. So obviously there's a few words after that, but my point being that if you look at, all that is being said, and I'm not even talking about some other pieces that are important to talk about or to look at the 9th Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. There's a lot of pieces that tie all this in together. But my point is the United States Supreme Court, if nothing else, the United States Supreme Court has the jurisdiction on areas where the Constitution is not being followed. And specifically, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and overrides anything in our state constitutions or in these, state laws. And every single government official has to follow and is bound by the U.S. Constitution. So that brings me back to what I was talking about with regard to, then the disputes between persons and the states. So if somebody violates my rights, let's say, for example, I'm going to throw the most absurd example out there. Let's say as an attorney, I show up on election day to, represent some individuals who are just simply exercising their rights to circulate petitions, following all state laws and constitutional provisions. And I bring my 6-year-old child with me, and 3 male deputies decide to beat the crap out of me and totally violate all my rights, leave me bruised and with, bleeding and, traumatized, leave my child almost 2 years later, still traumatized over what she saw happen to her mom, that such a thing would actually be live streamed for the most part. I know this would never happen in the United States.
Except it happened to you.
And then to add insult to injury, you know, such a thing would be they would decide to press charges against me for trespassing on government property while representing my clients and exercising several rights, including the First Amendment guaranteed rights. But at any rate, not that that would ever happen, but let's just say by the stretch of imagination that were to happen, and my trial were to be, you know, because of COVID and all the dangers, you know, inherent with that. How dare we have due process while there's COVID? That my trial.
I remember seeing an asterisk that says unless there's a virus, the Constitution, right?
Oh, that's totally in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So my trial was pushed to 6 or 7 trial dates now. I can't even count, you know, how many it's been because it's all BS. But at any rate, that at some point, if I, you know, say file the appropriate appeals to, this is in district court, you know, file the paperwork and the judge says, no, you don't have any of those rights. And then I go to the circuit court and the circuit court judge says, F the Constitution. And then I go to the Court of Appeals and the Court of Appeals in Michigan says in a 1-sentence order, we don't really see the need to get involved. If I decide to pursue this further, because at that point, you know, I might have, you know, being one person on my own, been a little too mentally and physically exhausted to continue writing appellate briefs that usually teams of attorneys work together to write. But anyway, if I decide to pursue it and if the state Supreme Court should say the same thing, you know, we just don't feel the need to get involved right now. You better darn well believe that the very next thing I would be doing would be, besides explaining this in video so that everyone across the United States could see how truly ugly things really are and explaining in detail why it is so ugly, would be to file in the U.S. Supreme Court to have the court slap the state courts and say, I'm sorry, but what the hell do you think you are doing? Not that case law is a thing, but we have precedent where we've explained how you idiots at the state level can't pass these laws of trespassing. Oh, I see my fingers were blurred. Oh, they're blurred again. I'm not giving you the middle finger. I'm using air quotes. But anyway, how you can't be charged with a state in a state or local, you know, court situation for trespassing when you are exercising your you know, your right to free speech or your right to peaceably assemble or any of those guaranteed in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So yes, the states do have at times, you know, the right to or the authority to, I'm not going to say they have the right to, but they might have the authority to delineate certain ways to exercise the right so that my right to vote and your right to express your views don't clash so that I feel like I am being, like threatened or whatever, harassed in some way to vote in a certain way, yada, yada. Okay, right. To keep our rights both intact. So that kind of gets to one of your other points that you were talking about. But at any rate, I do have the right and will go to the United States Supreme Court. And mind you, if anybody's listening, I am licensed in the United States, you know, I'm admitted to practice in the United States Supreme Court, but it doesn't mean you have to be in order to secure your own rights. And of course, there is that whole like Sixth Amendment thing. You don't have to have an attorney to represent yourself. Just one huge thing that really ticks.
Well, if you're in an organization, you do, but if you're an individual, you don't.
Well, in theory, yes, correct. But too many courts in too many ways have told individuals even that they don't have the right to represent themselves. And that's a load of garbage, but that's a story for another day. Just wanted to plug that, plant that seed one more time. So yes, I would have the right to do that. And I will do that if I need to. Who knows what course God has my case on, this hypothetical case, of course, because that would never happen here in the United States. But to that point, you actually, it kind of ties nicely. You talk about this concept of protect versus secure and your understanding of it. And I think the little light bulb you were seeing wasn't, me going, oh yeah, they don't have the right
No,
to protect.
matter of fact, I think I verbalized that it was you understanding where I was coming from on it.
Exactly. It was me getting a little bit more of what you were saying. And I don't know that we necessarily agree, but I don't know that we necessarily disagree. I'd have to flesh that out a little bit more. But you mentioned the concept of, you have your right to swing your arms. And, if you get to the point of you've come within my bubble and you have now smashed in half my face with swinging your arms, then the government, the local government has the right to, or state government has the right to, have some sort of battery or assault laws that will step in and try to fix that. By the way, all that government crap is broken. And concepts like restorative justice really need to be utilized because victims are actually pushed in the corner and victimized more by these prosecutors and the law enforcement officials, and the people who actually are doing harm typically are not actually having any kind of reparations or anything like that. And those who actually didn't do any harm are often the ones that end up serving sentences and having all kinds of community service. And the whole thing is a joke. And I say that as a defense attorney as well. But anyway. But you mentioned that the other side of that, if the government had the right to, or the authority to protect, or the duty to protect our individual liberties, that would mean that they could come in ahead of time and stop you from dancing because you might hurt somebody, et cetera, or whatever the case may be in terms of like the example of swinging your arms around. I would say that it's an ebb and a flow, because on the one hand, you can't come near me, swinging at me, putting me in reasonable fear, apprehension that you are going to harm me. Even if you never make contact with me, you don't have the right to do that. And so if the government has a law, and I believe every single state has a law to that effect, that's not the actual battery in the criminal sense. That would be the assault, the imminent fear of that bodily harm. I could see that. That's a reasonable thing. Okay. So that's where the government is putting something, it's labeling it as wrong before you're actually completing that act. And I can get that. But you have, you have government, on the other hand, I guess this is another example of how it's okay, maybe-ish, but you had the example in my case where, state law, we actually were following state laws, my clients were following state laws and everything else of that nature. In Michigan, you have to be 100 feet away. If you're going to give out any kind of campaign literature, if you're going to campaign for any cause or any ballot issue, if you're going to collect signatures for a candidate or a ballot issue, you have to be 100 feet away from the entrance of the poll, which we were like 229 feet. So that wasn't even the issue. They were just saying that the township clerk didn't want us there. And so by local ordinance, which actually wasn't even an ordinance, it was a resolution, but that's a topic for another day. She could just willy-nilly say, we don't want you there. And the sheriff's deputies would have the supposed authority to physically remove us from the property, but somehow not under the actual ordinance itself, but rather under the state statute of trespass, because the owner of the property, he said, the owner was the clerk, according to him. The owner of the property didn't want us there. And so the state statute, as almost every state statute on that topic says, when the owner says, you got to go, you got to go. But at any rate, all that aside, if we forget the nonsense that actually happened that day and focused on what is meant to be protected on election day with those kind of laws. Here in Florida, it's now 150 feet away from the polls, which the Republicans supposedly did to the people. I don't understand. But anyway, more restriction. The point is, there's a point behind it, and that is to keep you, if you are pushing for a candidate, if you are pushing for something in particular on that ballot, that you are not going to have your views be in someone's face as they're trying to vote. That you could tell them anything you want, you can get their signatures, you can get their support, you can whatever, right? But there's a point, a line where they're allowed to cross over that line and then be in the voting zone and be able to have that privacy or be able to not have that pressure and be able to vote without having somebody coercing them or threatening them or pressuring them in some way. So to a certain extent, the laws on that topic, I get that because they help us to not trample each other's liberties. But it is something that they're doing ahead of time, right? It's that concept. They're not waiting for me to actually, it's like saying you can't come at somebody and swing in their general direction close enough that they would reasonably fear that you are going to physically harm them. It's that concept. It's not waiting for somebody to actually threaten or coerce somebody into voting one way, shape, or form. It's that step right before, so that it's a preventative measure. And that's where our government, state, local, federal, it doesn't matter. Government on all levels starts taking that and then they run with it and they go wild with it. And they're like, oh, but then to protect your right to da-da-da-da, we're going to be able to go and run off and make all these regulations too. So it's just an interesting topic. So I get what you're saying, but I think that it literally, according to the text of the Constitution, is the government's job. And I'll say it is every government's job. So if my rights where I'm living right now are being trampled upon by government, I'll just say government, and there's anything at all that the local court can do, it is their duty to step in and stop that from happening. If my rights are being trampled upon and there's a state court or a federal court, if I'm asking any of them for help, they have all been obligated to uphold and support the U.S. Constitution. So anyway, that's, I guess, where I would say, we do have a little bit of a difference, but I get what you're getting at. So no, we don't have a difference.
All right. So I don't necessarily disagree with what you said, especially in the scenarios that you offered, but I do need to offer some clarification. But before I do that, I have to actually say something about her fingers disappearing. She was worried about fingers disappearing and looking like she was like flipping us off.
Yeah.
Like
that happens on California's freeways all the time, where people raise their hand, fingers vanish, and only one finger's left. And as I've traveled the country, I've realized it's very amazing that people in other states actually wave with all five fingers. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
And then let me just tell you, I lived for a lot of years in Minnesota, in rural parts of Minnesota. And when I first moved, so I finished high school in St. Paul, Minnesota, a lot more like LA or whatever, right? Detroit, Orlando. And then
but the difference is when you leave Minneapolis, you're outside the city. Here, it just keeps on going.
Well, no. Minneapolis, St. Paul. I mean, you have Lakeview. You have.
Yeah, true enough. There are some suburbs.
Oh yeah, it expands. Trust me. They now have multiple area codes, just the same. Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, when I left though, and of course, I graduated from high school at 16, and just like every 16-year-old, I knew everything. I mean, duh, I was the smartest person out there. And I say that as a parent of two 18-year-olds and a 20-year-old and an 8-year-old. So yeah, my kids are there too. But anyway.
So they inherited your brilliance.
We'll go with that. We will go with that. When I moved to the middle of nowhere, because for some reason, when I graduated at 16 years of age from high school with a semester's worth of college credit underneath my belt already, most colleges wouldn't take me. I had one college that would accept, oh, there's that finger again. One college that would, maybe if I do it in front of me. Yeah, there we go. One college that would accept me. And it was a college in a town I had never even heard of until I got the letter saying that, well, yeah, we'll take you. But anyway, I moved there, middle of nowhere. It was, they've changed their name now, but it was Southwest State University in Marshall, Minnesota. And way out in the middle of nowhere, closer to Iowa and South Dakota. And, when people are driving by and they would like wave, I'm like, oh my gosh, they think I'm somebody else. Or I'm like, did they wave? Are they mad at me? Were they telling me to like stop or slow down? I mean, it was very confusing, the notion that people would like, hey, stranger, hey. And so now I don't care where I'm in. I mean, like I live in the suburbs of Daytona Beach. And, you know, there's a lot of people, especially today, that whole like Daytona 500 thing going on, and, you know, people from all over come. And I don't care who you are. If I see you on the street or even in the car, you know, and I'm like, hey, I'm waving and smiling. If I ever went to California, which I think would be dumb, so no offense, I couldn't see myself doing that. But anyway, because
well,
you know,
it's okay
you're right.
once you realize where all the barbed wire is.
Well,
No,
I just,
Okay.
you know, I try to stay out of Chicago. I try to stay out of New York City. I try to stay out of, you know, the whole state of California. But anyway,
there are pockets of sanity in this state. There are. True.
Yeah,
Even-
it's
even
where
when I
Doug
go
and I
there-
live.
That's
I
where
will
we
wave.
live. Yeah.
Okay, my comment, and that is I've been to South Dakota. I've been to Montana. And
hopefully
when
not on the same trip, because then you fall asleep at the wheel. I mean, at some
no,
point, you just,
two different
okay.
times. So I'm at an event in Montana, Bozeman, and I take a break and I go for a run because, of course, that's what you're going to do.
Well, if it's that cold out, you got to do something to warm up the body.
No. This was summertime.
Oh.
So I go out for a run. People are honking. I finally found out honking is not get the hell out of the way. Honking is I see you. You're safe, which is really nice.
Huh.
In my experience,
A lot of people think I'm okay and safe than where I live. Jeez Louise.
yeah. Well, no, that's
Of
only
course, that happens while I'm driving with
Driving,
stickers on the
yeah.
back of my window, but, you know.
Yeah, that's another
And
story.
they're doing
I
that
thought it
one
was
finger
people
wave
honk when
at
they
me.
think you're cute.
No,
I
no.
mean,
No, that never happens to us, please. So the other thing is that when I have traveled through Europe and I've been to Australia and then I've been in my California. In California, it is more often, at least in my area, that if you walk past somebody, you know, see my fingers don't disappear. Every once in a while, you'll get a head nod. You'll get a smile.
What's up?
The person who does not want to interact with you will never turn their head towards you. They always look off in the distance. When I was in Australia, when I was in Soviet Union and other places, the idea was, why would I ever say hello to anybody I don't know? That's stupid. No eye contact, no smile, no nothing. It's just their culture. So I've learned that, you know, you kind of have to, I want to find out what is the culture like, because I'm not going to get offended because, hey, how you doing? And, you know, I get the one finger and they walk away. No. So it just depends.
I would just smile bigger and be like, hey, you have a blessed day yourself. See you later.
Well,
My
yeah.
experience in Australia was that the women love the American accent. So all you got to do is start talking and you're in good shape.
You get free beer.
And you get free beer and like a dozen ladies around you. Darwin, Australia, north side of Australia was my place. But as
I don't
for
really want a dozen women around me, hanging around, following me, but
No. Okay.
I'm sorry. You're gonna have to go to New Zealand then.
I'm gonna interrupt because I know crazy. My show.
I did grow up in LA. I was gonna say this real quick. I did grow up in LA, and when I was growing up, and you went out running, you didn't make eye contact unless you're wearing the same colors.
Okay. Well, anyway, we have now spent approximately 1.5 hours on
I still want to respond to what she said.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because I told her, for the most part, we're in agreement. First of all, everything's on a case-by-case basis, and it really depends on authorities. In the scenario that you provided, for example, Article 1, Section 4, times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So federal Congress does have the authority to make some regulations, and they have regarding what's going on around the booth and all that. So there would be federal law involved, and moving to a federal court would be completely constitutional in that scenario.
There's actually no federal law on the specifics that I was talking about, though. That's all First Amendment stuff.
Well, yeah, then you use the word guarantee with First Amendment. They don't guarantee your rights. If they did, then where's my guaranteed gun? But that's beside the point.
You're guaranteed the right to have your own gun.
I have a right to have it. If you look up the word bear, keep it bare. In the 1828 Webster's Dictionary, it says, as an example, a gun under one's coat. So the constitutional carry laws that these states are passing are completely in line with what the founding fathers believed were our rights regarding our guns. That said, the Second Amendment only applies to the federal government because shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. If it also applied to the states, that would mean that every single state law was also unconstitutional regarding guns. So we have to understand that. But that doesn't mean that the states can stomp all over our rights either.
Can I inject something?
But anyway, the last part. Hang on, Alan. It's not your show yet.
I keep forgetting. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
See, you know what he's going to do is I'm going to have you on my show, and then he's going to do this to me. So.
No.
I'm on for 2 hours also. Although I have advertisements and stuff, the station makes me take them sometimes. But anyway, so you might get a break. When it comes to when I was talking about the swinging arms, and obviously there's going to be certain places in which imminent danger is apparent, so on and so forth. These laws need to be made. Once again, then the question is who's to make them. It depends on what it's regarding, on who makes those laws. And when I use the swinging arms idea, it is my way of talking about guns without talking about guns. Their way of keeping us from swinging our arms is to outlaw us having guns in the first place, because you might shoot somebody. No, you're not supposed to outlaw me swinging my arms or having a gun, first of all. Now, if I'm using it or swinging my arms.
My brain is hurting, though. Wait. My brain is hurting. They want to stop you from swinging your arms, so they're going to say you can't own a gun?
No. I'm using it as a metaphor, is my point. So when I talk about swinging arms, it's a metaphor for owning a gun.
Okay, but
I should be able to swing my arms all I want, but if I punch you in the nose, I have violated your right. But at what point am I too close with my swinging arms where you feel you're in danger? Obviously, there may be laws also for that. Same thing with guns. They shouldn't outlaw me owning a gun, just like they shouldn't outlaw you swinging your arms. But if I'm going to use it if I'm going to use it in a manner that's close to you, that you're going to feel threatened, then obviously there's going to be something going on there, but not from the federal government, from the states.
Right, but reasonably feel threatened because. Well,
yeah, and then once again, now we got the word reasonably, and oh my gosh, that could be a conversation. We can get into this Fourth Amendment on the word reasonable when it comes to search and seizure. What is reasonable? What is unreasonable? And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who don't think that the rule of law is self-evident, as it would say in the Declaration of Independence, and they think unreasonable is something that isn't unreasonable. So that's where it really gets ugly. And so I think where you and I have most of our disagreement is either semantics or some of the details. But I think in a general sense, we are on the same page. But for me, whether or not the authorities exist is very big with me. And if the authorities don't exist and they should, well then get them. That's what amendment process is for. If the authority shouldn't be there, then don't grant the authority and don't let them have that authority. But we need to act upon it. Our problem is, as citizens, we have decided we trust the politicians, we trust the lawyers, because we're too busy with our soccer games, our date night out, and our favorite show. So we'll let them worry about it, and them tend to be tyrants. And that's our problem. If we have handed over, as Alan likes to say, the keys to the Ferrari. I'm sorry. It's a Corvette. I'm sorry. I always say Ferrari.
It's the keys to the liquor cabinet.
Right, I got that. I was getting there.
And the credit card.
Right. But that's what we've done, and we haven't done our job with oversight, number one. Number two, the states are supposed to actually have oversight over the federal government on all their decisions. 17th Amendment, 16th Amendment, even the Electoral College is different.
10th?
Well, the 10th Amendment didn't take away. It's not being followed. But in the case of the 17th and 16th, it took away mechanisms. But yeah. In other words, our problem is we've stopped being a republic, and part of being a republic and this is the one thing I wanted to get in when you were talking, and I waited patiently, is checks and balances. That's the main key here. Authorities and checks and
You
balances.
said you weren't letting the dogs in.
They're in the other part of the house, man.
Oh,
If they were in here, trust me, you'd hear it clearly. Oh, I hate it when I'm trying to record a video and that junk's going on. But,
All right, my turn. Yeah, I know. Go figure.
Alan, right?
Alan. Yeah, right. Yeah. The guy who invited you here. Right.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
We've now spent an hour and almost 40 minutes on the first Wackadoodle news piece.
Yeah, so much for an hour break of music or something, right? At the hour mark.
So we will not be going to any music breaks. We will not be going into any more Wackadoodle. And we're actually going to get to a couple questions.
Chat room, are you really bothered by that, though? Are you really totally bothered?
Yes. Yes.
Sons of Liberty says, who let the dogs out?
They didn't misspell dog, did they? No. Okay. Here we go. This has been wonderful. And Catherine, seriously, I definitely want you back on the program. And I'm pretty sure Doug would like to have you on radio.
No, I always love conversing with lawyers because they have a lawyerly way of looking at things that sometimes get fun.
I was just saying, I don't look like a lawyer, so who are you talking about?
Hey, are you talking about?
Hey, you're one of the lawyers I've had the most fun talking to. Usually, we are screaming at each other. All right. So.
Okay, no screaming. Here's the big question that when I first got introduced to Catherine that I really want discussed, and Doug's had this experience too, and I've heard this. So again, you got out of high school at 16, you got through college, you went to law school, you kicked A there, you were a researcher at the same time, you're a fabulous student. You become an attorney, licensed attorney. You took 2 classes on the Constitution in law school. Now, it would be my understanding as a layperson that if you're taking Constitution classes in law school, you are at the highest level of education on the Constitution. Is that fair?
Should be.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a valid understanding. Now,
I'm still paying for that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So you post law school, you come to self-study the Constitution. Approximately how long have you been at that? Give or take. Just
Wait, you said post law. I see your question.
Post law school.
Because
you start self-study on the Constitution, correct?
Yeah, because in law school you did a deep dive into the actual language, right?
Wait a minute. You're jumping ahead. So you've been at this some years in self-study on Constitution, correct?
I will say that my general self-study started, as you know, when I told you the other day, I knew at age 5 that I wanted to be an attorney. So literally everything that I did, all the courses I did, everything in school as an elementary school student, middle school, high school, college, everything was geared towards being an attorney. So, of course, when you're 5 and you're trying to figure out how to study the Constitution and you're being raised by some very liberal Democrats, I'll just say it that way, then your chances aren't that great that you're going to get to the source documents themselves for the first 20 or so years. But yes, that was I started at that age, but being able to really dig into in such a way that I was realizing maybe I hadn't been taught what I needed to know about the Constitution when I was in Constitution classes in law school. If we put the question that way, I would say, maybe, I don't know, 10 years-ish.
Okay. So compared to what you've learned in self-study on the Constitution and any related documents, did you learn anything new or different than what you learned in law school?
Yes, I learned that the Constitution is not a living, breathing document that changes with the
Amen.
whim of the
Hallelujah.
current political administration, and that there are some God-given, yes, I mentioned the word God-given liberties, and I didn't violate the First Amendment by saying that, God-given liberties that are guaranteed to us, protected for us, secured for us in the Constitution, and that there are, this is the biggest concept of all that I learned, that is the difference, that there are lawyers, government officials, judges, dare I even say justices, that get it wrong every single day.
The hell you say?
And I would include even the most recent vaccine mandate opinions that have come out from the U.S. Supreme Court. Even the win, wait, I got to do it in front of me. The win that is, that was handed down, what was it, like the 13th, 12th or 13th of January, where the federal mandate for general employees was struck down. If you actually read that language, or if you look at the dissenting opinions for the healthcare workers, of course, that was the bad order or opinion that said, oh no, you could totally inject the crap out of all those healthcare workers. That the federal government could totally do that. But the dissenting opinion was fighting against that. Even the dissenting opinion in fighting against that lost, it like totally missed the mark. It's like, okay, it's wrong because of all these. No, are you dumb? It's wrong because the government never has the right to inject people forcibly with anything, no matter what their job is. You don't have the right to do it to our military. You don't have the right to do it to healthcare workers. You don't have the right to do it to people who work in schools or in nursing homes.
But the executive mandated it.
What's that?
But the executive mandated it.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, the executive branch is allowed to make laws just the same as justices and judges are allowed to make case law. I mean, it's all totally okay as long as it's an executive order or a mandate. I mean, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Poke me 3 times.
I'm gonna inject so people understand that you're being sarcastic.
Yes.
And that is, and I'll give you the limit of my constitutional education, and that is, the federal government, through the executive branch, executive orders are allowable, except they had a limitation. They were meant as instructions for the executive branch.
Go figure.
I know. Go crazy. Which
it's a funny thing. Article 1, Section 1 says all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress. So, the president doesn't have any legislative powers. Oh,
but
dang
Ellen, can we tell the big secret, though? Your concept there that you just said before you move on. The big secret about that, the executive orders and the executive branch and all that.
Go ahead.
The thing is, and given how things have gone with COVID, this is something that people in Michigan definitely know my position on because they've heard me argue it in the Michigan Supreme Court against Gretchen Whitmer's orders and in many other respects. But the executive, whether it's a governor, whether it's a mayor, it doesn't matter. If there's the executive, but we'll just pick governors and you already talked about the president. A governor does not have the authority. They might have the power, which is a totally different thing, but they don't have the right, and they certainly don't have the authority, constitutionally speaking, to regulate the people through executive orders, because as you mentioned, and as it says, and I'm going to go off the top of my head, I want to say Article 5, Section 2 of the Michigan State Constitution, for example, that allows the Michigan governor to issue executive orders that are done in a certain way, presented to the legislature. They have X number of days, I want to say 60, to decide if they want to disavow or disallow those changes. But they are changes and things that are meant to reorganize the executive branch or to do something within the executive branch, because it is okay for the government to restrict or reorganize itself as long as by so doing they are not regulating the people or trying to mandate anything upon the people. But if you are, if I don't live in Michigan anymore, and a lot of people are mad at me that I'm not there to run for governor or AG or whatever. But if I were to run for governor of the state of Michigan or the state of Florida or whatever, I don't care what state, every state, if I would run for governor, you better believe if I took office, one of the first things I would do was make sure, each state is different with what exists. So for example, the state of Florida has actually, unfortunately, a lot more things built right into the state constitution in terms of how many subparts or branches or, agencies, if you want to call them that, exist but per the Constitution. But you look at what is the bare minimum, and then you take a big fat eraser and you erase all the other parts to the executive branch, because none of those administrative or regulatory agencies should even exist, because there should never be a rule or a regulation or an executive order or anything else that is ever promulgated to regulate the people, not case law, nothing, except for legislation that is properly passed by the people's representatives, because that whole Constitution guaranteeing Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution that we're guaranteed that Republican form of government. So at any rate,
there's that funny word vested, which I know Alan was expecting me to get into. I actually, for those of you who want to see me, by the way, talk to the.
No, I didn't.
Well, he did. Bonsall.
No.
By the way, anybody want to see me talking to the Bonsall School District? YouTube.com/Douglas V. Gibbs. I want to thank Sons of Liberty in there for bringing up my cockroaches quote.
I'm gonna interrupt real quick.
But what I was going to say is this.
Yeah.
Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, and every single state constitution, when it comes to the legislative powers being granted to the legislative body, uses the word vested. And the word, if you go to Blackstone, also he explains this. The word vested not only means that those powers are legally granted to the legislative body, but that they're irrevocable. They can't give them away. They're unalienable. Those legislative powers only belong to the legislative body. That's what the word vested means. And from what I've seen, it's in every single state constitution. In California's, it's Article 4, Section 1. All right, Alan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was sleeping.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end of the show. So
I'm back.
Actually, if you're sleeping on that, I have something interesting to add.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Okay. This is the fastest 2 hours I have been part of. You two have been absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I didn't think I'd have a problem with you speaking, and I was absolutely correct. But because we're going to have to end this in less than 8 minutes.
Yeah, because I have a feeling Chris and Kathy don't want our show to just continue into theirs.
They probably do, but never mind. Anyway, because Chris has been listening in for quite some time. And I usually forget this, so I don't want to. Ladies first, one finger. Katherine, please promote yourself.
Oh, yes. For anybody who's been listening to the show and you want to learn more about me or what I've been doing, you want to support or help or follow in any way, shape, or form, please do so, because I totally left my private practice funding wise, so to speak. And I'm not taking on paid clients since 2020. All I'm doing anytime, night or day, that I am not spending time with my husband or my kids or doing the fun homeschooling stuff. I'm fighting for freedom, reading cases, keeping up on what legislatures are doing, studying constitutions at the state level, doing whatever, educating people. I can host debates anywhere in the country if you want me to come, except for, I don't know about California.
We're here. We're here.
We're the southern half. That's all you need. South of Los Angeles.
But I will gladly do anything like that to be a moderator of a debate, to get people on their toe, keep people's candidates on their toes, anything like that. And it's all, I do everything on donation basis. So we have moved to a much smaller house than what we had in Michigan, I will tell you that. But my student loans are so old now that all the COVID, free stuff that people were getting with their student loans, I'm too old. My student loans are too old for that, apparently.
The student loans are so old, they're experiencing puberty. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway.
Your website?
Yes, if you'd like to support any way, shape, or form, if you start at restorefreedomkh.com, Restore Freedom, K as in Catherine, H as in Henry.com, that is the best place to start, because if you try to find me on YouTube, I'm often put in timeout for telling the truth. You can find me on Rumble, although their technology hasn't, let's be honest, quite caught up to, YouTube. And so we have some glitches every now and then. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook still. I don't know why they haven't put me in timeout besides shadow banning me. I'm still I said Twitter, I meant Telegram. But we are on Twitter, and I'm going to have to finally follow my son's advice from like 3 years ago, or in the middle of COVID. And he's like, you got to do these videos on TikTok. And I was like, I don't do TikToks, but apparently we're going to have to expand our horizons a little bit. So if you start with the website, we have links to all the social media. We're going to actually be updating our website and trying to make it even more user friendly. We have a Constitution app, Restore Freedom. There's our little symbol. I don't have anything on our logo displayed anywhere here. But anyway, it's an R and an F that are purple. Restore Freedom. And it currently just has the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. Eventually, when I get enough funding, i.e. donations, and I can, or somebody that's in the tech business who wants to help with this, I'd love to have all 50 states and their state constitutions fully text searchable, and you can link and you can highlight and you can have something right at your fingertips, so that when you're in the midst of the government oppressing you and violating your rights, you know exactly where to turn to. And it's not just an attorney, because most attorneys won't do their job and help you. It would be you defending your rights. So anyway, that is our app. My website, as I mentioned, restorefreedomkh.com. And we would love to have anybody helping, supporting, praying for us, donating, or having me on to educate or talk about anything on their own shows. So thank you guys for having me today.
Thank you so much. Dougie, promote
An
yourself.
honor sharing the microphone with you, Katherine Henry. Thank you for being on the program. Your link also went into the chat room, which has been just under 900 viewers pretty much all show long. It's bounced up and down, but for the most part, it's been between 850 and 900. And Sons of Liberty wants me to say my quote. We complain about the cockroaches in Washington, but we keep breeding them locally. Quit breeding them. That's my quote about cockroaches. It gets the dancing cockroaches going on in the chat room. I can be found at douglasvgibbs.com. Politicalpistachio.com is my blog. Nonprofit president, constitutionassociation.com, and I'm a fellow for the American Freedom Alliance and a lead instructor for about another 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different institutions. I have 8 books I've written, but you really want to see what I've been up to lately, youtube.com/DouglasVGibbs. I do have another YouTube page. I have a BitChute, I have a Rumble, and Brighteon I'm working on populating. I am on Twitter and Facebook, and yeah, they haven't kicked me off yet either, and I'm not sure why. But most of all, I am on AM radio twice a week, 1 to 3 on KMET 1490 AM in Beaumont, and K-Praise, or Christian station in San Diego County, 9 p.m. on Saturday nights. I was sick this week, so my show, I had them replay my last week's show because I was just too sick to do one. But next week we'll have a brand new program coming up. I am going through the Constitution with an emphasis on Christianity on that program. And last of all, I get to be on For the Republic quite a bit. And so I want to thank Mr. Alan Myers, my good buddy and fellow over at the American Freedom Alliance, for inviting me and allowing me to have some absolutely fun constitutional moments with Katherine Henry. This has been one of the funner shows that I have done in my lifetime, and I've done a lot of them.
Thank you to both of you. I knew I was going to need a little bit more extra time for you to promote yourselves, and I was correct. Anyway, this has been the fastest 2 hours that I've been part of. I've been totally absorbed. There was no way I was going to interrupt these conversations. Even though I love to play music videos, it helps me develop my ability to use Zoom, because I'm not techie. But there's no way I was going to do it. We got through one wackadoodle news piece. It's amazing. I will promote myself in that if you want to learn more, go to my website. Yeah, I do have one. FedEd, FEDED.us. I am on Doug's radio show, but he usually doesn't say it properly. So let me say it properly. It's on KMET 1490 AM. And I say AM because it stands for America. So that's the way you say it. It's 1 to 3 p.m. You can find it on the web, West Coast time. I'm beginning to do more outreach because I want to do via the computer FedEd classes, basic monetary system classes. I do them live here in Southern California with Doug's classes once he takes a break, but I do want to start doing them more. It would take 4 1-hour shows. You can contact me at feded.us if you're interested. I see it is 7 p.m. I see the ladies here. So do stick around, Katherine. It's not a hard handoff with these ladies. And I will conclude with my normal ending comment. Alan Myers here. This has been another episode of For the Republic. To all you good people out there, you lovers and defenders of liberty, freedom, rights, individuality, quality of opportunity for all. Oh, you patriots. Oh, yeah, you know who you are. Until next time, may you be and stay safe and well. Patriot out. Ladies.
Gentlemen and lady. That was a great show. I loved it.
Thank you.
Really, really, really good show.
Well, when you have 2 guests and you're quiet most of the time, it's a good show.
And you didn't have to work very hard, did you?
Nope, not at all.
And he didn't have to shoot his gun to tell us to silence and quit attacking or anything, because we know how to play in the playpen.
Well, it's a Second Amendment thing, and I'm all for the Second Amendment. I'm
supposed to bring my gun to class today.
I figure you're always lock and load. Come on.
The FBI showed up one time at one of the classes I do, and we were talking about the First Amendment, and I told them they showed up the wrong class. Second Amendment is next week.
Good one.
Well, people like to use all kinds of different terms, this party, that party, this direction, that direction. And they ask me about me, and I just say, no, 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 no. And they go, well, what are you? I go, I'm about the Constitution. I'm about the Declaration of Independence. That's it. I'm not on either side, up or down. Because when it comes to the Second Amendment, I will say I'm very liberal. I think if you're not insane and you're not a criminal, you have a right to lock and load.
I would say if you're a criminal, you still have a right to lock and load, barring certain circumstances, because there's a lot of people labeled as criminals that still have the right to protect themselves.
Absolutely.
But the one thing I should have said to you guys,
but not while they're in jail.
No.
I said barring certain circumstances. That would be a good circumstance to bar the,
Yeah.
But one thing I didn't tell you about me that I probably should have, maybe it was just kind of in my blood right from when I was born, but my birthday is July 3rd. And my husband is July 7th. And so we've always kind of, loved our freedom probably a little bit more than some of the other people in our family. We just love independence.
So that's like a triple birthday week for you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, of course, I get to come first, then the country, then my husband.
Everybody knows it was actually finished and signed on the 3rd. It's just they put the 4th on the docket.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Of course she knows that.
Well, Katherine, again, thank you so much.
Sons of Liberty says epic show, by the way.
Really?
Oh yeah, he said epic show, Alan, epic show. So
Even with me here, that's amazing. All right.
yeah, he gave you the credit. Yeah.
Okay. What a sweetheart. Katherine, thank you seriously for being here. Great interchange. I definitely want to stay in touch. Hope you don't mind. I'd love to have you back because I now understand with you too. I need to really narrow the question. I mean, really tight.
Yes.
Because both of your knowledges are very extensive and you can bring so much to one little point, but in a way that really gets it. And
we're also both slightly passionate.
No.
Just kind of.
Yeah. Or extremely well informed. The one thing again, and I sincerely mean this, you're an attorney, you're licensed. You went to law school. When you say things about your profession, I get to listen. I get to understand. I get to believe. When somebody else who's not in the profession, let's say, attacks, well, they're, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know.